The awakening, the wind on Valar didn't howl, it whispered. It moved through the ruins like breath through hollow bone, carrying with it the scent of rust and time. Jackson Riley stood at the edge of a collapsed temple, wiping sweat from his brow as twin suns beat down on endless dunes of crimson sand. He'd come here chasing a salvage contract, nothing more. A routine dig on a dead world that most star charts labeled as archaeologically depleted. That assessment, Jackson was beginning to realize, had been catastrophically wrong. The temple entrance yawned before him like a throat carved into bedrock. His scanner flickered, struggling against some interference deeper in the structure. He'd seen this kind of architectural style before, geometric, mathematical, obsessively symmetrical. The ancient ones. Everyone in the Salvagers Guild knew the stories, a civilization that had spanned galaxies, then vanished without warning 50,000 years ago, leaving behind ruins that defied explanation and technology, that made modern science look like children playing with rocks. Jackson activated his helmet light and descended into darkness. The passage swallowed him. His boots echoed against stone that had been fused at molecular perfection, walls so smooth they reflected his light like dark mirrors. The temperature dropped with each step. His breath misted in the beam of his headlamp. The deeper he went, the more his instruments malfunctioned. His comm went silent. His nav beacon died. Even his emergency locator started throwing error codes. He should have turned back. Every instinct screamed at him to climb back toward sunlight and safety. But Jackson Riley hadn't survived 5 years of deep salvage by listening to fear. He pressed forward. The tunnel opened into a chamber. It was vast, impossibly so. His light couldn't find the ceiling. The walls curved away into shadow, and in the center of the space, suspended in midair by nothing Jackson could identify, hung a suit of armor. He froze. The armor was beautiful and terrible all at once. Black metal that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it, segmented plates that suggested both organic flexibility and mechanical precision. It had no visible seams, no fasteners, no welds. It simply was as if it had been grown rather than forged. Symbols he didn't recognize spiraled across its surface, glyphs that seemed to shift when he looked directly at them. Jackson's scanner exploded with readings. Energy signatures off every known scale. Gravitational distortions. Temporal flux. His screen simply displayed, error, unknown phenomena detected. He circled the armor slowly, heart hammering. This was beyond anything he'd ever found, beyond anything anyone had ever found. If he could get this back to civilization, he'd never need to work another salvage job in his life. He reached out. The moment his fingers touched the armor, the universe shattered. Light erupted from every glyph simultaneously, brilliant, searing white that burned through his closed eyelids. The armor didn't fall, it moved. Plates separated and flowed like liquid metal, wrapping around his arm, his chest, his legs. Jackson screamed but couldn't hear himself over a sound like stars being born. The armor wasn't just covering him. It was merging with him. He felt it in his bloodstream, his nervous system, his thoughts. And then, silence. Jackson stood in the center of the chamber, encased completely in the black armor. His breathing came steady through a helmet he didn't remember forming. Through the visor, the world looked different, sharper, layered with information he couldn't quite process. Energy fields, structural weaknesses, threat assessments. A voice spoke inside his mind. Not words exactly, more like concepts delivered directly into his consciousness. Synchronization complete. Authentication verified. Welcome. True flame. What? Jackson's voice echoed strangely in the helmet. What are you? I am the Warden. The last defense. The eternal shield. I have waited 50 millennia for your arrival. I'm nobody, Jackson managed. I'm just a salvager. You've made a mistake. There is no mistake. The ancient ones created me to bond only with one who possesses the will to face extinction itself. You are that will. Before Jackson could protest, something changed in the chamber. The walls began to glow with the same symbols that covered the armor. Light raced along circuits that hadn't functioned in epochs. The entire temple started to wake, and across the galaxy, across 1,000 worlds in the vaults of 12 alien empires, in the war rooms of civilizations that had forgotten why they feared the dark, alarms began to sound. On the Korthian flagship Undying Spite, War Marshal Thexvar felt his secondary heart stop as ancient sensors screamed warnings. The armor of Valar, the weapon that had broken his ancestors' first empire. After 50,000 years of blessed silence, it had bonded with a host. In the crystalline towers of Zenthera Prime, the Council of Minds convened an emergency session. They'd found the armor once, 2,000 years ago. It had taken their finest legion just to seal it back beneath Valar's sands. Now it was active. Now it was awake. The Hive Collective, vast and ancient and patient, stirred in the void between galaxies. They'd been waiting, watching. The armor's awakening was the signal they'd anticipated for longer than most civilizations had existed. The war was beginning again, and Jackson Riley, standing in that ancient chamber with power beyond comprehension, flowing through veins that still thought of coffee and rent payments, felt the weight of it all pressing down on him like the gravity of collapsed stars. The armor spoke again, and this time there was something almost like urgency in that impossible voice. They know you exist. Now, they will come for you. All of them. We must prepare. The true war has never. It has only waited for the true flame to return. Return from where? Jackson whispered. From the future we must yet create. The chamber walls exploded outward. The hunter's face. Jackson burst through the collapsing temple into Valar's crimson daylight, debris raining around him like meteors. The armor moved with him, or perhaps through him, in ways that defied physics. He leaped 40 feet without thinking, landed without impact, rolled and came up running at speeds that should have torn a human body apart. Behind him, the ancient structure folded in on itself with a sound like reality tearing. Dust clouds erupted skyward, turning the twin suns into blood-red halos. Jackson's ship, the Martyr's Bargain, sat 3 miles away across open desert. 3 miles he could cover in minutes now, his enhanced vision already plotting the optimal route, his legs pumping with strength that felt both foreign and intimately his own. Vessel approaching. Vector suggests intercept course. Threat assessment. Critical. The armor's warning came with visual overlays. A ship decloaking in high atmosphere, sleek and predatory, already launching something toward the surface. Jackson watched it fall like a silver tear, atmospheric entry turning its hull white-hot. How critical? Jackson gasped, still running. The pilot is known to me. Designation Sarah Chen, probability of hostile intent, 97%. Jackson stumbled, nearly fell. Sarah? That's impossible. Sarah's my partner. We've worked together for 3 years. Correction. The entity calling itself Sarah Chen has worked with you for 3 years. Actual identity, unknown. Biosignature matches. No known species in my archives. The drop pod hit the sand 200 yards ahead, creating a crater and a shockwave that rolled across the dunes like thunder. Jackson skidded to a stop as the pod's sides peeled open like a flower blooming in reverse. She stepped out, and Jackson's heart cracked. Sarah Chen looked exactly as she always had, compact, efficient, with dark hair pulled back in a practical braid and eyes that missed nothing. She wore light combat gear, her face set in an expression Jackson had seen 1,000 times across salvage sites and cantina tables. But there was something different now, something in the way she moved. Too fluid, too perfect. Jackson, she called out, voice carrying across the desert. Thank God you're alive. When the temple collapsed, I thought. She stopped, seeing the armor. Her expression flickered through emotions too quickly to track. What have you done? Sarah. Jackson's voice came distorted through the helmet. The armor says you're not who you claim to be. Sarah's face hardened. For a moment, just a heartbeat. Something rippled beneath her skin like shadows moving under ice. Then she was herself again, or whatever version of herself she'd always shown him. That thing is lying to you, Jackson. It's a weapon. A doomsday device the ancient ones built to exterminate anyone who opposed them. It bonds with hosts and drives them insane, makes them believe they're saviors while they burn worlds. She took a step forward, hands raised peacefully. I'm part of a task force that's been tracking artifacts like this for decades. That's why I got close to you. We knew your salvage routes might lead to something dangerous, but I never thought you'd actually find it. She is improvising, her psychological profile suggests. Mission parameters have changed, she was ordered. To kill you if you activated the armor, she is now attempting verbal retrieval. Is any of it true? Jackson asked and hated how his voice broke. The last 3 years? Sarah's expression softened. Some of it. You're a good man, Jackson. Stubborn and reckless and too brave for your own good. I didn't expect to. She stopped. Please, just let me help you take it off before it's too late. Detecting energy buildup. She is charging a weapon. Jackson saw it then. The faint shimmer around Sarah's right hand, like heat distortion. Not a weapon she was holding. A weapon she was. Sarah, don't. She moved. One moment she was 10 yards away. The next, she was on him. Her hand transformed into something like a blade of crystallized light, driving toward his helmet with killing force. Jackson's body reacted before his mind could process. The armor's reflexes merged with his own instincts, pulling him sideways, letting the blade pass inches from his face. Sarah spun, impossibly fast, and her other hand came around in a strike that should have shattered his ribs. The armor absorbed the impact, but Jackson felt it, felt the force that could have liquefied organs, crushed bone to powder. I'm sorry, Sarah said, and she sounded like she meant it. I really am. Her form rippled. The human disguise peeled away like shed skin, and what stood before Jackson was beautiful and alien and utterly inhuman. She was taller now, her body covered in scales that shifted through colors like oil on water. Her face remained mostly the same, familiar enough to hurt, but her eyes had multiplied, becoming 6 orbs of pure silver arranged in pairs down either side of her elongated skull. Shapeshifter, Jackson breathed. Krell infiltrator, she corrected. 7th class. I've been hunting rogue ancient artifacts for 200 years, Jackson. You're good, but you're human. Slow. Fragile. She moved again, faster than thought, her strikes coming from impossible angles. Just die quickly and I promise I'll remember the man you were before the armor corrupted you. But the armor was teaching Jackson. Each exchange, each strike he barely avoided. He felt it downloading combat protocols directly into his muscle memory. Ancient fighting styles. Techniques refined over wars that had consumed galaxies. His body began to respond not with human reflexes, but with something far older. He caught her wrist. Mid-strike twisted through Sarah. The Krell crashed into a dune 20 yards away and came up looking genuinely surprised. Impressive, she admitted. The armor has integrated faster than our simulations predicted. Perhaps you are the true flame after all. Her body began to change again, growing, adapting. All the more reason you need to die now before you remember what you really are. Incoming, multiple signatures. The sky tore open with light. Ships dropped from orbit, dozens of them representing every major faction in the known galaxy. Korthian dreadnoughts like flying cathedrals of war, Syntheran crystal cruisers that bent light around their hulls, smaller vessels from 100 different civilizations, all converging on Valar with weapons hot and ready. They'd come for the armor. They'd come for Jackson. The Krell who'd been Sarah looked skyward and laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You see? It's already starting. The old war. The eternal war. And you're at the center of it now, whether you want to be or not. I didn't ask for this, Jackson said. None of the true flames ever did. That's what makes you dangerous. She tensed, preparing for another assault. Last chance, Jackson. Let me kill you quickly or let them tear you apart slowly. Either way, the armor won't have its host, Jackson. We must leave this world. I can open a gateway, but you must trust me completely. You must let me merge fully with your consciousness. What does that mean? It means I will know all that you are, and you will know all that I was. We will become something new, something necessary. The first bombardment began. Orbital strikes from ships that had decided if they couldn't capture the armor, they'd destroy it. The desert around Jackson turned to glass as energy weapons superheated sand into molten crystal. Sarah charged through the chaos, her body now a thing of blades and armor plating that matched Jackson's own. Behind her, drop pods rained from the sky like judgment, alien warriors of a dozen species, all coming to claim the prize or eliminate the threat. Jackson Riley, salvager from Earth, had one impossible choice to make. Trust, the ancient weapon that had bonded to him, and surrender his humanity, or die on this forgotten world and let the armor fall into hands that would use it to end civilizations. He closed his eyes. Do it, he whispered. Understood. Initiating full synchronization. Prepare yourself. Jackson Riley. You are about to remember who you really are. The armor flooded into his mind like stars going supernova. Memories that weren't his own crashed through his consciousness. Battles fought on worlds that no longer existed. strategies that had saved trillions, decisions that had damned billions. The Ancient Ones hadn't just created the armor as a weapon, they'd created it as a successor, a living archive of their greatest warrior, meant to bond with someone capable of continuing their eternal mission. And that warrior, that legend the galaxy had feared for 50 millennia, had a name that Jackson now remembered with terrible clarity. He'd been human once. Long before humanity had crawled from Earth's oceans, he'd been taken, transformed, elevated into something that could stand against the darkness between galaxies. He'd been the first flame, and Jackson Riley was his reincarnation. The armor erupted with light. Not the white of stars, but something deeper, the blue-violet of creation itself. A gateway tore open in reality, a passage to somewhere beyond normal space. Sarah screamed in fury and lunged, but Jackson was already moving, already becoming what he'd always been meant to be. He stepped through the portal and vanished from Valar, leaving behind only an echo of words that made every alien empire in orbit go silent with ancient fear. The war never ended. It only waited for me to wake up. The Eternal War Jackson, Riley opened his eyes to impossible geometry. He stood in a space that shouldn't exist, a construct suspended outside normal reality, where dimensions folded into each other like origami made from the fabric of the universe itself. Crystalline walls pulsed with data streams older than recorded history. Around him floated holographic projections of star systems, battle formations, and something else. Memories that played out like three-dimensional films. His memories. But also not his. Where are we? Jackson asked, though part of him already knew. The archive. The last sanctuary of the Ancient Ones. When they ascended beyond this dimension, they left me here to guard their knowledge and await the next cycle. The armor's voice no longer came from outside. It resonated through Jackson's entire being, inseparable from his own thoughts. You are the next cycle, Jackson. The first flame reborn. Jackson watched the holographic memories unfold around him. He saw himself, the man he'd been, standing on command decks of ships that dwarfed planets. Saw battles against enemies that defied description. Saw the face he'd worn 50,000 years ago, young and fierce and burning with purpose. Marcus Chen. Jackson whispered, the name surfacing from depths of memory that shouldn't exist in his brain. That was his name. My name. Before. Yes. Humanity's first explorer to make contact with the Ancient Ones. They found in him, in you, something unique, a will that could not be broken, a compassion. That extended even to enemies. A courage that faced extinction without flinching. What happened to him? To Earth? The hologram shifted and Jackson's heart broke. He watched Earth burn. Not from war, but from something worse, a calculated sacrifice. The Ancient Ones had offered Marcus Chen a choice. Let humanity evolve naturally over millions of years, hoping they'd survive the coming darkness, or allow them to transform a single human into a weapon powerful enough to buy the galaxy time. Time for younger species to grow strong enough to face what lurked beyond the galactic rim. Marcus Chen had volunteered, had allowed himself to be remade, enhanced, bonded with technology that rewrote him at a molecular level. But the transformation required a power source that could only come from one place, Earth's biosphere itself. The planet hadn't been destroyed. It had been harvested, its essential life force converted into the energy that powered the Warden armor and kept Marcus Chen alive through 50 millennia of war. I killed my own world, Jackson said, voice hollow. You saved countless others. The mathematics are cruel but clear. One world sacrifice purchased survival for millions. And when I died, when Marcus Chen fell in battle, you didn't die. The Ancient Ones prepared for that possibility. Your consciousness was stored, preserved, waiting for a compatible host to be born. A human host, because only humanity possessed the psychological profile necessary to wield the armor without becoming a tyrant. Jackson felt sick. So Jackson Riley never mattered. I was just an empty vessel waiting to be filled. No. The armor's response came sharp, almost angry. Jackson Riley is essential. Marcus Chen had the will and the courage, but he was a soldier from humanity's early space age. Rigid, militaristic, willing to sacrifice anything for victory. That's why he eventually fell. He forgot how to be human. The hologram shifted again, showing Marcus Chen in his final battle. Jackson watched himself, his former self, standing alone against an enemy fleet, the armor pushed beyond its limits. Victory achieved, but at the cost of everything Marcus Chen had once valued. The man who emerged from that battle was barely recognizable as human, a weapon that happened to have a pulse. The Ancient Ones knew this would happen. They designed the reincarnation protocol specifically to preserve your essential warrior nature while granting you a new life, a chance to remember what it means to struggle, to fail, to fear, to love. Jackson Riley is not a vessel. He is the second chance Marcus Chen never thought he deserved. Jackson stood silent, processing. His hands, his human hands inside the armor, trembled. So what am I now? Marcus or Jackson? Both. Neither. You are what comes next. The archive shuddered. Alarms that Jackson somehow understood flooded his consciousness with threat data. Something was approaching. Something vast. They have arrived. The enemy. The Ancient Ones could not defeat. The reason this war never truly ended. Show me. The holographic projection expanded, showing the galactic rim. Normal space ended there, giving way to the intergalactic void, the vast emptiness between galaxies. But that emptiness was moving, shifting, a darkness that wasn't just the absence of light, but the presence of something that existed before light, the Hive Collective. Jackson's inherited memories supplied the context. Not a species, not even a civilization in any recognizable sense. The Hive was what happened when a galaxy's worth of civilizations merged their consciousness into a single distributed intelligence and then decided that individual thought itself was a disease to be eradicated. They consumed galaxies slowly, methodically, converting every living being into nodes of their collective consciousness. No individuality, no choice, no death but no life either. Just eternal existence as part of a hive mind that stretched across the universe, growing forever, assimilating everything. The Ancient Ones had fought them to a standstill 50,000 years ago. Marcus Chen had been their greatest weapon in that war, but even he hadn't been enough to truly defeat them. The best he'd managed was to drive them back beyond the galactic rim and by time. Now the Hive had returned, stronger, larger, patient. They waited for the armor to reactivate. They knew it would. Eventually, they've spent 50 millennia preparing to face you again. Me specifically, the true flame. The only individual consciousness that ever truly threatened them. They fear what you represent. The possibility that one will sufficiently strong can stand against the collective. They must eliminate you to prove their philosophy correct. The archive shuddered again, more violently. Jackson felt the armor responding, preparing for combat, flooding his system with chemical cocktails that sharpened his mind and reflexes to supernatural levels. How long until they reach inhabited space? 7 days. 7 days to prepare an entire galaxy for an enemy they've forgotten how to fight. Jackson laughed, and it came out bitter. Any good news? You are not alone. The armor's awakening has triggered other ancient defenses. Across the galaxy, sleeper weapons and orbital platforms are coming online. The Ancient Ones left behind an entire network, all keyed to your biosignature. You can command them. Can I win? The armor hesitated. In that pause, Jackson felt the weight of 50,000 years of war, of impossible choices, of victories that felt like defeats Marcus Chen could not, but you are more than he was. You have experienced weakness, fear, loss. You understand what you fight, for in a way he never could. That's not an answer. No, it is hope, which is all any war worth fighting ever offers. Jackson took a breath, felt the armor around him, within him, part of him, felt the weight of 2 lifetimes pressing down. The warrior he'd been and the man he'd become. Somewhere out there, Sarah Chen, no, the Krell infiltrator who'd worn her face, was probably still hunting him. Alien empires were mobilizing for war, most of them likely to shoot at him rather than listen. And beyond the edge of everything, the Hive Collective was coming with the patience of entities that had already lived longer than civilizations. But Jackson Riley had spent 3 years scraping by as a salvager because he'd refused to give up. And Marcus Chen had fought for 50,000 years because surrender wasn't in his vocabulary. Together, they were something new. Something necessary. All right, Jackson said. Where do we start? With the hardest part. We return to where this began. We gather the people who want you dead and convince them to fight beside you instead. They'll never listen. They will. Because you will show them what I showed you, the truth of what's coming, and because, unlike Marcus Chen, you still remember how to talk to people rather than command them. Jackson felt the gateway forming again, preparing to take him back to normal space, back to the galaxy that feared him, back to a war that had never truly ended, only paused to catch its breath. He thought about Earth, sacrificed 50,000 years ago to birth a weapon. He thought about all the worlds that would fall if he failed. He thought about the man he'd been, both of them, and the person he was trying to become. The true flame, Jackson said quietly. That's what they called Marcus Chen. What do they call this version? They will call you what you choose to become. The ancient ones created a weapon. You have the opportunity to be something greater. A shield. A protector. A symbol that one person, willing to stand against the darkness, can make a difference. And if I fall, then you fall as Jackson Riley and Marcus Chen both, as someone who chose to fight because it was right, not because it was easy. That is the only kind of fall worth having. The gateway opened fully. Through it, Jackson could see the fleet still orbiting Valar, weapons trained on each other in a tense standoff, all of them waiting to see if the armor of Valar would return. Jackson Riley stepped through back into reality, back into the war that had waited 50,000 years for him to wake up. The armor blazed with light, not the white of destruction, but the blue-violet of creation, of hope, of defiant life standing against the dark. And across the galaxy, on a million worlds where people looked up at the stars and wondered what came next, they saw that light and dared to believe. The eternal war had begun again. But this time, the true flame remembered what it meant to be human.